Under the glossy chaos of morning television, very few moments ever deviate from the script. Producers plan every second. Hosts rehearse their questions. Guests know the lines they're expected to deliver. And yet, on a Tuesday morning in New York City, with 3 million people watching live, something happened that no one could control. A woman in the third row stopped breathing, not from illness, but disbelief. Not even the cameramen noticed her at first. All eyes were on the stage. What happens when mockery meets unshakable conviction? Can a performance meant to humiliate be flipped into a turning point for an entire culture? The answer is this: when faith isn't theoretical, when it's lived, embodied, and quietly prepared in solitude, it does not perform. It stands. And when a soul is anchored in truth rather than applause, no amount of provocation can break it. That's what the world saw when Jonathan Roumie entered the studio, not as an actor, but as someone who had come ready, not to win, but to witness. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. It began not with the glare of lights, but days earlier with an email labeled urgent. Framed as a typical guest invitation for The View, it was anything but routine. Jonathan's publicist flagged it immediately. "They've tried this before," she warned, referencing a prior moment when a priest was ambushed on air. The goal hadn't been dialogue, it had been demolition. But Jonathan had no intention of retreating. Instead of writing counter-arguments or consulting media advisors, he prayed. 3 nights in a row, he asked not for victory, but for clarity. Not for applause, but courage. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, producers coordinated with Whoopi Goldberg, arming her with talking points sharpened by atheist columnists. They weren't inviting a guest, they were setting a stage for combat. As Jonathan stepped through the doors of ABC Studios that morning, text messages poured in from colleagues and pastors. "She's going to crush you. Don't go." But his reply was silent, just a hand on the small cross around his neck. The atmosphere in the studio wasn't warm. It was electric, but not in a celebratory way. Applause was polite, thinly veiled behind wary expressions. Only a few audience members offered silent support. A woman with a rosary, a man with the chosen shirt. Most were waiting for the kill. Jonathan knew that. And still, he smiled. Whoopi's voice cut through the air with practiced ease, but her words weren't questions, they were challenges. "So, Jonathan," she said, cocking her head slightly, "you've been portraying Jesus for, 5 years now. Tell me, do you actually believe you're him?" In a world where confusion often drowns out clarity and voices of faith are mocked instead of heard, it's more important than ever to hold on to what matters. This is exactly what The Secret of Jesus' Apparitions offers, a path to clarity and peace through his revelations. This ebook goes into his prophecies and offers insight into what lies ahead. It's available for free in the pinned comment. Grab it now before the edition's gone. The laughter from the audience was tight, uncertain. It wasn't humor, it was bait. She knew it, the producers knew it, and Jonathan definitely knew it. He didn't flinch. His fingertips brushed the cross resting against his chest, a movement more instinct than habit. "I think about that responsibility every single day," he said. His voice was calm, steady, unbothered by the weight in the air. "When millions look at you and see something sacred, you don't take that lightly." Whoopi leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "But you don't actually hear voices, right? You don't think God is speaking to you?" Silence expanded across the studio, stretching between the rafters and crawling across every seat. Cameras zoomed in. The control room stilled. Jonathan's expression didn't change. Faith isn't about hallucinations, he replied. It's about recognizing that not everything real is visible. Hope, love, forgiveness. None of those can be touched, but they transform people every single day. There was a subtle shift in the room. You could feel it in the way people stopped fidgeting, in the unspoken agreement that something unexpected was unfolding. Jonathan continued, I receive letters constantly. Kids in hospitals finding peace, veterans rediscovering purpose, families reuniting. That's not performance, that's fruit. Someone in the back whispered, Amen. It wasn't loud, but it landed like thunder. Whoopi's jaw tensed. She tried to laugh it off. Come on, she said, voice dipping into mockery. Virgin births? Walking on water? Resurrections? We're in 2024. These are stories, not science. Jonathan didn't argue. He just looked at her. Really looked. 2 billion people disagree. And I've seen the lives changed, not by superstition, by truth. That was the moment she laughed. Not the kind of laugh that invites joy, but one edged with ridicule. 2 billion people used to think the earth was flat, she snapped. Belief doesn't equal truth. The audience stirred, uneasy. Not because of Jonathan, but because her laughter had gone too far. Behind the cameras, a crew member shifted uncomfortably. Someone else looked away. Jonathan remained still. And then, with almost impossible calm, he said, The ones who mock faith are usually the ones searching hardest for meaning. Whoopi's smile faltered. The studio lights, once flattering, now cast sharp shadows across her face. She shuffled her cue cards with unnecessary force, grasping for control that was slowly slipping away. Let's talk about your show, she said, her tone edged with something colder than skepticism. The Chosen has made millions. Just how much are you profiting off people's desperation? There was no pretense of curiosity left. The attack was direct now, personal. But Jonathan didn't recoil. Any success that's come from this project, he said gently, has been grace, not strategy. The stories people share with me, that's the real treasure. Whoopi scoffed. Spoken like a man who's figured out how to monetize faith. Her words were acidic. You're not preaching. You're selling hope to the highest bidder. A woman near the aisle stood, maybe 60, wearing a faded denim jacket and holding her purse like a shield. Her voice was clear. That show saved my family. Security began to approach, but Jonathan subtly lifted a hand. Please, he said. Let her speak. The woman's voice trembled but didn't break. My husband and I had already signed divorce papers, 25 years over. Then we watched your show, together. It reminded us what love looked like before pride poisoned it. She wiped her eyes. We tore up the papers. No one clapped. Not yet. The room was too stunned. Even Whoopi didn't interrupt. For a few moments the only sound was the quiet sniff of someone crying in the second row. If something about this moved you, don't ignore that feeling. There's a free ebook waiting in the first comment. Just a few copies left. The applause came late. Real, no flashing applause sign needed. And with it came a turning tide. Slow, but irreversible. Whoopi forced a laugh. This isn't testimony hour, she snapped. This is national television. But those testimonies, Jonathan said, not looking at her, but at the woman, are why this matters. She flipped to a new card, a fresh line of attack. You grew up Catholic, right? Let's not pretend the church has been innocent. How do you reconcile your loyalty with abuse, corruption, cover-ups? The air thickened. But Jonathan didn't blink. I don't defend institutions, I defend truth. People fail, structures fail, God doesn't. His voice was calm, but something underneath it carried steel. Even the hosts at the table sat quietly now. Something had shifted. The planned confrontation was slipping through their fingers, becoming something they no longer controlled. Whoopi didn't pause this time. Her subsequent statement was incisive and swift, like a razor that was designed to cut deeper than theological concepts. So tell me, where's your God when children starve, when wars rage, when good people suffer and nothing makes sense? It wasn't a question. It was a dare. Jonathan looked at her, then lowered his gaze briefly. His fingers moved again to the cross, slower this time, as if drawing strength from a memory no one else in that room could see. From the inside pocket of his jacket, he retrieved a small photograph, creased, fading at the edges. He held it up without a word. "This is my sister," he said quietly. "Emily. She was 29, a teacher. She died 3 years ago after a drunk driver hit her at an intersection 5 blocks from the church she'd just left." A stillness overtook the studio. Not the orchestrated kind producers crave, but the kind that swallows sound. The photograph remained in his hand as he continued. "She used to text me after every episode of The Chosen, said it helped her forgive the man who left her at the altar. She believed God was stitching something new into her life." He placed the photo gently on the table in front of him. "Her funeral was standing room only," he said. "Not because she was famous, but because her faith had touched people. And at a time when grief almost crushed me, when I couldn't breathe without pain, I held on, not to a myth, to something that held me when nothing else could." Whoopi didn't interrupt. The words hadn't stopped her, but the way he spoke them had, without bitterness, without vengeance, only weight, only truth. Jonathan glanced at her. "You ask where God is in suffering," he said. "He's there, weeping with us, standing beside the broken. Psalm 34 says, 'The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit.'" Someone in the control booth muttered, "Jesus," but not as profanity, as recognition. Jonathan leaned forward. "Hope isn't the absence of pain. It's what keeps you alive inside it." Whoopi opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came, and in that silence, the audience stopped watching a show. They started witnessing something else entirely. Moments like this don't happen often. Check the first pinned comment now. Your free ebook is there, but it won't be for long. The silence didn't dissolve, it calcified. The audience, once a passive sea of reactions, sat frozen. Phones were lowered, no one was scrolling anymore. Behind the cameras, the crew stopped whispering cues. One of the producers mouthed something into his headset, but even his voice had dropped, like speaking above a whisper might rupture whatever fragile truth had settled in the air. Whoopi stared at the photograph. Her expression had changed, not softened, but slowed, like her own thoughts were dragging behind what had just unfolded. She reached for a new card, hesitated, then let it fall from her hands. The cue cards scattered like leaves across the desk. Her fingers trembled. Jonathan didn't move. In the control room, the switchboard lit up. Live viewer messages began pouring in. Tweets, emails, comments, texts, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. One of the operators blinked at the monitor and whispered, "We're trending." The audience wasn't clapping, and they weren't prompted to. Instead, they began to rise, slowly, without coordination. No one led, no one followed, just row by row, standing, in silence, no applause, no chants, just a quiet, rising presence. As if truth, once spoken plainly, deserved nothing less than reverence. One woman put her hand over her heart. A man in the back removed his baseball cap. Whoopi blinked. "That's a very personal story, Jonathan," she finally said. Her voice was softer, not broken, but cracked. "Faith is personal," he replied. "But that doesn't mean it's private. It means it's real enough to live with, real enough to lose with, real enough to face cameras and questions with. The camera panned wide. Every co-host was silent. Two had tears in their eyes. Suddenly, a producer walked onto the set, something that never happened live. He handed Jonathan a phone with the screen already glowing. "You need to see this." It was a tweet. 50,000 shares in under 5 minutes. "First time I've seen someone defend faith without anger, without shame. I believe again." Another message came in seconds later. "Lost my mother last week. Haven't prayed in years. I just did." The show was still broadcasting, but it no longer felt like television. It felt like confession, like reckoning, like the moment something you thought was gone comes roaring back. Whoopi didn't try to reclaim the spotlight. She sat still, visibly processing the shift that had unfolded without her permission. Her co-hosts, once eager to volley back and forth, kept their hands folded in their laps. Even the ever-alert stage manager gave up whispering instructions into his mic. Jonathan stood slowly, not triumphant, just grounded. He turned, faced the main camera, and spoke as if directly to someone sitting alone at home, unsure whether to believe anymore. "If you're watching this and feel ashamed of what you believe, don't be. Truth doesn't depend on approval. It lives whether we like it or not." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "And it lives in you too." A wave of reactions followed. A man in his 20s pulled a small cross from under his hoodie and kissed it. Another, in the back row, wiped his eyes with both hands. No one cheered, no one booed. But every soul in that room felt the same vibration. Something irreversible had happened. While you're still thinking about what just unfolded, take a second to scroll down. A free ebook is available in the first comment, but copies are limited. Backstage, the social media team was overwhelmed. Hashtags multiplied. Videos were clipped and uploaded in real time, some gathering millions of views before the show had even ended. Jonathan's silences, Whoopi rose to the top of global trends. But it wasn't to shut her up. It was about something older and more important than the argument or the show. News anchors called it the most unfiltered moment of spiritual discourse in live television history. Pastors scrapped Sunday sermons to talk about it. Influencers posted reaction videos between tears. Even journalists, normally allergic to faith, paused their cynicism. If these insights resonate with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your super thanks support helps us create more content like this. Join our community and stay connected. Production meetings across Hollywood shifted. Faith-based scripts, once shelved for being too sincere, were suddenly revisited. Executives reread old pitches. One studio greenlit a series about modern martyrs the very next morning. And somewhere in a quiet office on the West Coast, an old entertainment mogul picked up a pen. His handwritten letter arrived at Jonathan's team days later. It was brief. "I mocked faith on screen for 3 decades. I just watched your interview. You reminded me why I stopped praying and why I'm starting again." Jonathan never framed the letter. He didn't need to. Because the response wasn't about him. It was about people who, for the first time in a long time, realized they weren't alone. And maybe, just maybe, it was safe to believe again.